As Richard said, I'm the Chief HR Officer of Sun Life Financial in the Philippines. My name is Yahmin Mattison, and Bjorn was just saying, you know, all Filipinos have easy names to pronounce. Well, you've just met the first Filipino whose name isn't easy to pronounce. So I like to be called Yahmin. There's a story behind that, but that is not the story I'm going to tell you today. I'm going to tell you a story about reaching for the sun and how Sun Life became #1 in the Philippines. Okay, let me start off. Where do I point this? There you go. Okay, you probably can't read that very well, which is just as well, because I don't want you to focus on that too much. 2009 was probably the time that Richard was talking about. We were facing a very bleak future. We could not see the sun, as we like to say in our company. 2009, if you look back to our economy at the time, it wasn't growing much. The insurance industry was 0.7 of GDP. Compare that to our neighbors like Thailand, which is at least 2%. So we were a long way behind. As a people, as Filipinos, we didn't believe in financial services at all or insurance at all. 90% had little or nothing to leave their family if they die. 90%. Only 2% were financially independent upon retirement. Think about that. 16 million people in Metro Manila alone, only 2% were financially independent upon retirement. 89% were worried about paying for medical treatment, and that is still true today. And only 10% of those who go to elementary finish college. That's primary school and then very few finish college. So it was a very bleak future. For us, we weren't growing much. Within the top 10 companies, I think we were around #3 or #4 at the time. Within the top 10 companies, we probably had the least growth. 2.9 billion net income, 2,500 agency, just about. We couldn't seem to break through that number. Declining agency productivity. And 70% of our business was coming just from Metro Manila, where we knew the rest of the country wasn't feeling insurance at all. So this was 2009, and those were our dark days. So there we were, not growing, a lot of economic challenges, a low insurance penetration rate. This is the challenge in 2009, and this is where our company had to start to do something. If we were to make any inroads in the industry and become #1, which was what our ambition was. So, what was our response, Sun Life Financial Philippines' response? Well, we came up with a program called Route 5. And if you look at the numbers there, you'll realize why it's called Route 5. Because all of them had a 5 in front of it. 5,000 agents, 5 billion in AFYP, that's a measure of sales in insurance, annual first-year premiums. 5 billion in net income. If you remember the slide before, it was 2.9 billion and declining at the time. And 50 billion in AUM for our asset management business. Now, if you think, it's difficult to kind of just think about how difficult that is, but it's almost like we doubled everything. We wanted to double everything, our sales, our agency force, our assets under management, our net income, in 5 years. Now, at the time, we'd been in the company about 115 years, and we hadn't grown that much. So it was a tall order for us to grow, very tall order for us to grow and double ourselves pretty much in 5 years. All to be achieved by 2015 at this point. Okay, so what were our key strategies? You were looking earlier at agency. Our agency was declining, but we wanted to expand it. We needed a bank assurance partner. We had to expand our asset management distribution, and we had to build a brand. Because if 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more, 6, 7 years ago, if you ask people what Sun Life was, people would say it was a laundry detergent. Am I right? You're laughing because I'm right. Yeah, nobody knew what it was. People who did kind of weren't really sure what it would do for them, what our products were. And so we had to build a brand. And we had to do something about making people aware about what life insurance was all about. Because people just did not want to buy life insurance. They had other priorities. So there started, Route 5. Okay, so what did we do as a business? First is, you see at the top there, it's a program called It's Time. And this was basically our advocacy to teach financial literacy to Filipino people. So it's red or kind of maroonish because we wanted to be as brand neutral as it could be. It wasn't about people buying our products. It was about making people aware that they needed insurance, that they needed to protect themselves and their families for retirement, for the future, for the children's education, for their own health. So it was fairly groundbreaking at the time because everybody else was advertising about their products. But we decided, no, we have to teach Filipinos first what insurance is all about. So It's Time went around the country. And then somewhere, I think in the second year or so, we hired Piolo Pascual. How many know Piolo Pascual? Yeah, everybody knows Piolo Pascual. Maybe not the foreigners, but Piolo. When I recruit people into the organization, if you ask them, what do you know about Sun Life, they'll say, well, I know Piolo. But again, that was fairly groundbreaking at the time. It's probably common now, but we were the first insurance company to use a brand ambassador. If you remember, that was because, why would you get, why would you get a brand ambassador for an insurance company? But we were the first insurance company to use a brand ambassador. Now everybody has one. But at the time, we were the first one because it was such a difficult message to sell that we needed someone who was relatable. And we needed someone who was already our client, right, who believed in our product already. And the great thing is he's always had a great story to tell about us. And he's continued to be our brand ambassador for over 6 years now. And then we grew the number of advisors. And there was a huge recruitment drive for that all over the country. We had very little presence then in outside of Metro Manila, and we expanded to Cebu and Davao and some of the other metro areas. But we needed to do that. We went everywhere to try and increase the number of advisors. Because at the time, if you didn't have a good number of advisors, you would never get anywhere. By contrast, the number one company at the time had 9,000 advisors. We had 2,500. We had no chance. Okay? But one of the things that we tried to make sure we were doing was that the quality of the advisors were there. We spent a lot of time and effort in training these advisors so that we had the best advisors in the business at the end of it. We still didn't have the most number, but we had the best ones. Okay? And then obviously, well, there you go. We went to Shine Big is the advisor recruitment program. And then from the HR point of view, we then had to do culture change. And one of the things about having a great sales force, right, agency force, is that they do a lot of fun, innovative things, because they're not employees, they're not salaried employees. So you have to incentivize them by trips, by programs, by huge shows, by having Piolo come to the town halls. And we decided we're going to do that for the employees as well. So what did we do, right? By the time we got to 2015, we were number one in the industry. I'm saying 122 because that's 2 years ago. At the time when in 2015, we had 86% employee engagement. Now it's 90%. Our client focus is 70% net promoter score. I don't know if any other companies use that, but that is extremely high. Many of our competitors are either at the 30 or the 40, so that's extremely high. And then we focus on our corporate social responsibility. So after all of those brand building, educating the market, using brand ambassadors, growing the agency force, making sure that the quality was there, we got to number one in 5 years. In fact, we hit most of our Route 5 targets in 4 years. So we were very happy about that. Okay, but thank you. Okay, that's the short story, that's the business story. What's the HR behind it, if anything? Okay. All right. I'm going to show you a couple of slides showing our key human resources programs. And I already know, many of you will say, oh, great, we have that. Because I'm sure that you do. if not exactly the same, then something very similar. First of all, we aligned everything and communicated. What I was saying was, whatever the program had, whatever sales program they had, we also did for the employees. So the first thing they did was a very innovative play called Knights of the Sun, where everybody came in costume, and they presented the sales target for that year. And we did that for the employees as well. And that really resonated, and from that point on, we needed to be all singing, all dancing in all our town halls. But that was a real, kind of epiphany for HR, because up until that point, we talked to them, we tell them what was going on, we'd give business updates, but we never really cracked the how to get them interested thing until we decided we would completely align with what our sales force was doing. So there alignment and communication, we focused a lot on performance management. We had it on every conceivable form of communication to all our managers and employees. Next one was, this is a slew of programs that really had to do with making good leaders, trying to make them good leaders. I'm often asked, in your engagement, you have 90% engagement. What is it that makes the most difference? Is it your sports programs? Is it your wellness programs? Is it, singing and dancing on stage by the leadership team, which I think many companies do? I'll be honest with you, I really think it's about leadership. People might leave a company. People will often leave a company because they don't like their boss, right? And so making sure that our leaders were prepared for the kind of change that we were asking them to do was very, very important. And a lot of our leaders are still quite young. Many of them are millennials now. And so a lot of it was kind of, we worked on gamification. It's only now that it's all online, but at the time we had an online platform. This is here on the right is a financial services game, which we also use for our clients now. Started with the employees, now we use for our clients. To try and get them to understand what our business is about and how we make money. Because you'd be surprised, in insurance, it's not quite the same as selling a product, right? You invest a lot of that money before you can make money later on. So that was a very important learning for our leaders, to try and understand what it is, why we were focusing on the things that we were doing. Okay, next group. Continuous improvement, and we have a Japanese in the room. Everybody, I'm sure, has some sort of continuous improvement program, but that became something that we focused on a lot. Because you can't double anything. You can't double sales, you can't double income, you can't double the number of advisors if you don't keep improving yourself. If you did it the year before, you have to, if you've been to Cebu this year, as an example, what do you do next year? You can't just keep going back to the same places doing the same things. So continuous improvement and making that a part of our culture was just very, very important for us. Okay, finally this, total rewards. First, we've always had an annual incentive program, but we made it stronger, and we made sure that it was tied to our Route 5 targets. Each and every one, if you go back long enough, even our client services frontline employees, if you look at their individual development plans and their goals, if you go back far enough, it would point to a Route 5 target or all of the Route 5 targets. So everything was very much aligned. And we actually, in HR, talk about being, quite manual and being very detail-oriented. We actually audited many of these just to make sure that we were actually aligning our performance management. And then something that I'm very proud of, we launched the first fully online flexible benefits program. And it still is the first fully online flexible benefits program. It's like Amazon, if you go on it. We had a great partner, and it's done wonders for us, because at the time that this was happening, we were coming up to about 50% millennials. Now it's 67%. But we're a very old company. We've had people who've been with us, no joke, 30 to 40 years. So it was just very, very hard. You have people who've been there before other people had been born. Do you know what I mean? So So it was just very, very hard to get the right mix of benefits. We still had, rice allowance. We still had, we're still giving away sacks of rice. But I know you're looking at me like, all the millennials are looking at me like, what? What would I do with rice allowance? So the flexible benefits program was one of the best things that we did. It wasn't easy, but it was one of the best things that we did. We allowed people to stay on our old benefits program, but they could flex it as well. And we were surprised. We thought we would get about maybe 70% take-up. We got 90% take-up after a year. Okay, and of course everybody has this, right? Basketball, volleyball, football, board games, Filipino, birthday parties. We have Filipino games this year. We have all sorts of, people play pico and Chinese garter. Those of you in my generation will understand what I'm talking about. But, because when we ran it the first year, just to give you perspective, when we ran the interdepartmental tournament the first year, people were saying, that team will always win, IT will always win because they have such good basketball players, right? And so we decided to level the field. And so we give the same points for board games like chess and Monopoly and all that sort of thing, and Chinese garter and pico and all that, as we do to basketball, and that leveled the playing field and got everybody involved. And so that's, we've really worked hard on that, and we're very happy. I want to say something about my football team, because in 2011, when I first joined, we had to, they really wanted to join, so we put uniforms on them, and they looked good, but my God, they were awful. We had to put them out on a muddy field, and they were so awful. We didn't score a goal through the entire tournament. On July 29, they are fighting in the finals of the corporate league. So we're very, very proud of them. They've come a long way, just like us. But okay. And then lastly, on our 120th year in 2015, we launched a program called 120 Rays of Giving Back, run by the Sun Life Foundation. And we gave everybody a booklet that literally listed down 120 ways that you can give back to the community. So it could be something like making dolls for people, taking cancer-stricken children to the movies, giving them a party, Brigada Escuela, which is quite popular. And then we let them do it either individually or by groups. And it was great because either departments did it or barcadas did it, even if they weren't, even if they weren't in the same department. And it really engaged people because they could do it with their friends. It didn't have to be a group that they always work with. I don't want to work. I don't want to go with you on a Saturday to an orphanage. I want to stay with my friends. And we just let them do that. And we were looking for 120 groups of volunteers. We ended up with nearly 400. It was a wonderful program, and we were doing it on our 120th year. That's why 120 Rays are giving back. But 2 years later, we're still running it. We have to change it now to 122 Rays because it's been so successful. And it's one of the programs, again, that we sat around thinking about what's the next thing we're going to do, and this was it. And we're very proud of it. Here you have our Sun Life scholars. We put some scholars through in different universities, all the way to the University of Mindanao. And not all of them, but at least half of them are now our employees as well. And that's my boss there, reading stories to children, our CEO. Okay. Okay, so what did HR do? I'm just gonna summarize that. First, we aligned the culture. We talked about performance management because it was so important to raise performance. We flexed our benefits because it was so important to get everybody engaged. We ran the whole engagement program because it was the key. It was the key in making sure that people were happy to work as hard as they could. We upgraded our leadership because we knew it was key in having people perform. So all those programs, I'm sure you all have, but we genuinely, in a very detailed fashion, made sure that they were aligned with what we needed to get to Route 5. We pushed our boundaries. When we were doing the Sun Flexibility, when we were talking about the Sun Flexibilities program, there were a lot of people who said, we've never done this before, no other company is doing it, why should we do it, right? Like, it's scary. You have to go through, in an insurance company, the InfoSec is absolutely scary. We had to get hacked by somebody in Ireland, kind of thing. It was such a long process, but we had to go through it, and we pushed our boundaries. It was something HR had never done before. We pushed our boundaries because we really felt that it was the right thing to do at the time. And for me, communication, again, that's my boss, looking absolutely gorgeous. I can't remember now what her role was this time, but she's had a few of these where she's been wearing a cat suit or an adventure suit or whatever. But that's the way we communicate. We communicated on every platform. We made people believe in our message, and we made people align to the message. And finally, we made it fun for everyone. I don't know if you can see that, but that's the entire leadership team, shrouded in shrouded in robes, because our theme at the time was Star Wars, and we were all Jedis. And and the employees loved it. Like, we made complete fools of ourselves, but the employees loved it, and they remembered what we were talking about. Sometimes they remembered the Star Wars version rather than the Route 5 version, but it worked. And it was something that we carry on to this day. Okay, lessons learned. I'll just go through this very quickly. First of all, you have to know the business, right? I'll be honest with you, when I first became CHRO, I didn't know much about the insurance industry. It was my first time in the insurance industry at the time. Making money in insurance is very different to making money in, say, a food service industry where I came from. And I had to learn that. I had to learn the business. And I think it's very important in HR to understand exactly how your business works. And whatever you have to do to learn that, I spent a lot of time with my CFO at the time. He was very patient, teaching me what AFYP was and all that sort of thing. But I think you really have to understand the business, right? So that you know what to do, what interventions you do as HR. Next one, you have to be brave. I think sometimes you have to push your boundaries every now and again, and just see what will work and what won't. If your company is trying to double things in 5 years, you do have to be brave. You can't just sit there and let everything happen, right? Okay, you have to challenge what you know. Especially in the Sun Flexibilities program, because everybody was saying it's not going to work. We've always had this one, and that's why we have a very good engagement and low attritions, because we've always given away sacks of rice every quarter. But and everybody knew that was fact. But you have to challenge that sometimes. Not so much sometimes for the present, but also for the future. At the time when we changed it, we had 50% millennials. Now we have 67. So we changed it. That was only 3 years ago. We changed it right at the right time. Keep moving. You can't stand still when your business is moving very quickly. This one I like very much. My boss has told me this several times. Accept that sometimes you fail, but fail fast and learn fast, whatever it is. I'm not going to tell you all my stories of failure, but there have certainly been a lot in the last 5 or 6 years I've been with Sun Life. But my boss has always said it's okay to fail, and that's an important cultural thing, actually, to tell people that it's okay to fail. But she always said, if you fail, though, you have to learn from it very quickly and get up and do something different again. And lastly, because I wouldn't be in Sun Life if I didn't say it, you have to keep reaching for the sun. In 2009, it was very, very dark for us, but we reached out for our Route 5, reach for the sun. It should have been very difficult. It was very difficult for us, but we got there in the end, and HR was along for the ride every step of the way. And now we have a new dream. It took us 122 years to get to 2.2 million clients. Now we want to get to 5 million by 2020. So that's, again, we are reaching for the sun, but that's what we want to do for the Filipino people. Thank you very much.